What's up, guys? Coach Mike, Play Fast Football. All right, make sure you check out our sponsors. GameStrat's our sideline replay system that we use. In the description box below, I will leave a link. Takes you directly to GameStrat's website, so that if you want more information on GameStrat, you can click on that link to go directly to their website. Difference USA, which is the ultimate striking machine. It's something we have in our weight room. We have one that attaches to our squat racks in our weight room, and you can work on striking year-round. You don't need a partner. You don't need a dummy. You don't need a medicine ball. Hooks right up to your squat rack. We absolutely love it. JustPlayFB, which is the diagram tool that I use anytime I am going to draw plays or do a webinar or go to or speak at a clinic. JustPlayFB is the only diagram tool that I use. Defensive Coordinator 1 in-game app that lets you chart the game as it's happening live, input data so that you can make critical adjustments based on things that are actually happening in the game, calls you're making as against the calls that are being made by the other team, so it's happening live in-game. And then Dome Hats, which is a major sponsor of Play Fast Football. It's one of our football hats here, all right, with our Swords Up logo on the back and then our logo on the front. All right, so make sure you check out Dome Hats. They have a great custom online hat builder where you can generate your own hat, change the colors on different panels and the lids and the underside of the lid, and put your logo with a PDF file, attach your logo in there and see what it looks like, change the colors up, different hat styles. So make sure you check out Dome Hats for all your hat needs. So I'm going to look at today, first we're going to take just a brief talk about personnel and how people label personnel. Now I'm going to look at one of our favorite formations, and then how you can wrinkle it a little bit with the same personnel on the field, and then how sometimes that can be confusing for the other team trying to maybe label your personnel or how they're trying to play you based on the personnel that's in the game. Okay, so first thing you need to look at, all right, up here I've got 20P or 11P. All right, usually what that means with the numbers is when you're looking at the numbers, teams are trying to label the personnel based on the field. The first number is the amount of running backs on the field. The second number is the amount of tight ends on the field. So when teams are trying to label the personnel that's on the field, they're giving it number labels that's very generic so everybody understands. When you're talking about the skill groups, there's going to be usually 5 skill positions that you're talking about, because you're going to figure most of the time everybody's going to have a quarterback on the field with the exception of maybe some wildcat stuff. So in general, personnel groups get labeled by number of backs first, number of tight ends second, and then you can deduce from there how many wide receivers are on the field. So if we were a 20 personnel team, we'd have 2 backs with no tight ends, which means we'd have 3 wide receivers on the field. If we were an 11 personnel team, we would have 1 back with 1 tight end on the field, which means we would have 3 receivers on the field. If we were a 21 personnel team, 2 backs, 1 tight end leaves us with 2 wide receivers. 22 personnel, 2 backs, 2 tight ends leaves us with 1 receiver. 32 personnel, 3 backs, 2 tight ends, we don't have a receiver in the game. 30 personnel, 3 backs, no tight ends, we've got 2 receivers in the game. So when you're talking about personnel, that's how personnel groups in general in football get labeled. And a lot of times if you're watching college, NFL games, some guys do it in high school, you'll see somebody on the side holding up a number, and that number usually indicates to the defense what the personnel is on the field. Why are they trying to do that? At the college level, a lot of times there's a lot of substitution packages that come in and out of the game based on personnel changes. The way the rules are in college football now, the way it works, if the offense changes personnel, defense has a chance to change personnel. They can't snap the ball until they give the defense a chance to change personnel. So in the college game and in the high school game, at some places or a lot of places, there can be personnel changes, so you want to know the personnel that's on the field so that you understand the personnel that you may want to put in on the field. It also a lot of times can help dictate what types of plays you're going to see, so that when you've broken down a team by personnel groups, you now know the types of plays that you're going to see. And then a lot of times defensive coordinators or guys will have calls or packages or things that they like based on the personnel group that's in the game. So that's why personnel gets broken down the way it does, for substitution purposes and then for game plan call purposes, for things that you like against certain personnel groups with maybe the personnel group that you have on the field. Now, I don't know about you, but for me in high school, a lot of the times we don't make a heck of a lot of substitutions on defense unless guys are tired. In my 20-year experience as a head high school football coach, our personnel group on the field is usually our best personnel group on the field. It's the best 11 we got, and we don't have a lot of change per se. For us last year, a personnel group that we changed, we took a D lineman out, put a linebacker in, took a linebacker out, put a D lineman in. We played with 3 safeties all the time. We really didn't change personnel all that much. On offense, our personnel groups were 20, 30, or 10. So we would either add another fullback into the game or sniffer into the game to make us a 30 personnel team. We would take a sniffer out and put a receiver in and make us a 10 personnel team. But those are really only the few major changes that we made on offense as a personnel group. So for me as a head coach, there's way less personnel changes on offense and defense simply because my best 11 happen to usually be my best 11 and I don't have a lot of subs other than trying to keep guys fresh or injuries. Now when you look at that, for us, we are generically a 20 personnel team. So when you label us, you can pretty much be sure that we are a 20 personnel team. And to take it a step further, we normally play in the past with our sniffer fullback as an inline or between the tackles player. So it really is a true 2-back personnel set along with the personnel that's in the game. So it was a truer 2-back formation, and it was a true 2-back personnel. The 11 personnel group is where it gets kind of interesting with the way the game's being played nowadays. With the 11 personnel group, you're starting to get that guy that is more of a hybrid tight end fullback, where he can do a lot of things as a tight end, but he can also do a lot of things as a fullback or a sniffer. And then, to me, as far as the personnel is concerned, is it a guy that ever lines up on the line of scrimmage attached, or is it always a guy that lines up kind of off as far as the personnel is concerned? All right, so as far as the personnel is concerned, if that guy never lines up attached here, then I'm going to consider it 20 personnel. So when you're scouting us, you would consider us in this set a 20 personnel team because that guy very rarely lines up attached. Now, if this guy happened to be a receiver type, that maybe he goes out here and lines up in the slot or lines up in trips, then you'd have to determine whether you want to label that personnel-wise as a 20 personnel set or 11 personnel set. Now, formationally, where it can get interesting and what you're seeing a lot more of nowadays, at least in the college game, formationally you're starting to get into situations where this guy becomes more of a Y off in a position where he has created another gap, not only another helmet, but he's created another gap. He's in a position that gives you a almost 3-man surface. But the difference is the double teams, the combinations when he's slightly off as opposed to attached, what make it kind of formationally a little bit different. But as far as the personnel is concerned, you'd have to look at this set and say, okay, who is that kid? Is it 11 personnel or is it 20 personnel? What do they do that's different in those sets or with that personnel grouping on the field? If you were playing against us and we lined up in anything like this, I would probably still consider us a 20 personnel team because that kid for us was never a guy that was attached on the line of scrimmage. Now, formationally, what this is starting to allow teams to do and the flexibility of it, the reason I am so adamant about being a 2-back 20 personnel team, or if we were going to move to a hipped position kind of Y-off type deal, the reason I am so adamant about those sets is I think it's the simplicity of the set combined with the multiplicity of the options it gives me as an offensive coach. What I mean by the simplicity of the set is, my mindset is I like to control the looks on defense to the best of my ability so that I understand what I'm getting, I understand what I want to run, my quarterback understands the box count and the RPO game and who we want to read. I try to limit the fronts if I can. I try to limit the coverage looks if I can by staying very simple within my formation. And then because of that position right there, I feel I can carry a lot of things in my game plan that I wouldn't be able to carry maybe if that guy was attached. Now, when the tight end is attached in true 11 personnel, it creates a lot of different issues for defenses, and you get into a lot more formations that could be 3-by-1, nub side, backside tight end, trips or tray with the tight end attached, and 3 receivers with a single on the backside, 2-by-2 with a tight end flanker and twins on the backside. In that personnel group, the tight end attached gives you a lot of things that can cause the defense a lot of issues. When I've talked to people in the past about why we don't play with an attached tight end, my reasoning has always been, number one, it's hard to find good attached tight ends in high school. Number two, I have a hard time figuring out how to coach that player if we don't have enough guys on our staff to have an individual tight ends coach. At the school I'm at currently in the county I work, there's approximately 8 paid football coaches working our varsity program and our JV program. It's very hard for me to find an individual tight ends coach that I can give a supplement to while still being able to field the rest of my staff with the offensive and defensive positions I need to run a JV team and a varsity team. So you have to go out. For us in our situation, we would have to find volunteers, people willing to work that maybe don't teach and have their own independent living that they make, and they just want to coach so they don't need a supplement. You need to add bodies onto your staff to get to that point, because usually in college and the NFL, that guy is coached by a position coach. When you don't have that in high school, the problem you run into, or at least the problem I've ran into, is having to structure your practice plan to understand who's going to coach that position. When he gets in the run game, especially if he's attached and you're working combinations and cutoffs, and you're going to see more fronts or more looks than you might see with him in an off position. Now you've got to have your O-line coach in a run game really coaching that guy up, especially if you are a read-orientated team where on the backside that kid is going to have to do some different things to leave whatever you feel is the read defender unblocked, whether it be down blocks and doubles or arc releases. And then he's got to be in the passing game. So in the passing game, usually the O-line coach can't teach him the route concepts, how to run routes, all the different things he needs to do to be a receiver in the passing game. So you got to send him either with the receivers coach, receivers and quarterbacks, so that he can get his reps in the passing game, while at the same time he can get his reps in the run game. So one of the reasons I've always been a big fan of 20 personnel 2-back sets is with the limited amount of teaching time that we get, I feel like when we get into our run game and then into our passing game, we can kind of control the reps and the looks we're going to see so that we can spend more time preparing our kids for what we're going to see to get those reps in. As soon as I start to make more formational changes, yes, it makes me more dynamic as an offense, but I now have more things that I have to prepare for when I start to see different fronts, because with a tight end attached, I think, in my opinion, the fronts really start to get multiplied. When the tight end is not attached, especially for us the last couple of years, not playing him in an off position, but playing him in the backfield, I feel like I've eliminated some fronts. I would argue that over and under are the same front in that personnel group. It's just a matter of identifying where the 3 technique is, because most of the time in a 2-back set with a slot, even an under team would take their Sam linebacker and walk him off and not have him play in a 9 technique. Now, if they were an under team and we went wide off like this, do they decide to bump that down to under and play the Sam in a 9? That's up to the defense. That's what they have to determine. So the Y offset gives you a few more options, because it may affect either loosening a 5 technique or maybe drawing a Sam linebacker down if they're an under front team, or maybe making the defense adjust to the fact that he is essentially in a tight end position, creating a potential 3-man surface. He's just not attached on the line. So like I said earlier, you're going to lose some things without him attached on the line, some combinations and some cutoffs. But at the same time, when he's off, my opinion is you're going to gain a bunch of things for us that we want to do. You're going to gain a bunch of things. And what do I mean by that? When he is off, this is a kid that can now travel. So if you are a motion team, he's a kid that can travel pre-snap. If he's a tight end, he's got to trade pre-snap and reset. So when he trades, he's going to have to reset and establish himself on the line of scrimmage. If he's a Y-off guy, he can travel across and back, out. He can travel wherever he wants, and you don't have to reset him because it's now a motion and it's not a physical trade onto the line of scrimmage. So when he's a Y-off player, he can travel. When he's a Y-off player, he can travel in the run game post-snap. So he can insert, he can travel backside to zip or kick or cut off on the backside. In a bootleg game, he can travel behind the line of scrimmage, or he can do a lot of things, to me, that give you a lot of flexibility in the Y-off position. Now, what you may lose, like for us, we were a gap-orientated team the last 4 to 6, 8 years, with 1 or 2 years sprinkled in there when we were inside zone with a little bit of outside zone. So when we're a gap team and we're carrying our version of the duo play without a tight end, which, again, I know this upsets some of the purists that study, Jim McNally and NFL football and what the duo play really is. We run a version of the duo play from our 20 personnel set. It's wrinkled to be a little bit different. We have some issues that maybe condensed flanks or big bodies don't have, but we still carry the play. We also carried power, counter a couple years back. This year we were a dart team. So as a gap scheme team, I played this player inside the tackle box because of the blocks that he needed to make within our gap schemes, especially the power play. It's very hard for him, if he gets a tighter 5 technique, to kick out that 5 technique if you're going to run the power play. Maybe easier to pin a 5 technique depending on how he's lined up, but it's harder to kick him out. So you lose a little bit of your gap scheme from that standpoint. What you gain, in my opinion, I think from this position here, recessed off the ball a little bit, I think now when plays are going away, I think it might be a little bit easier for him to scoop cut off a 5 or a loose 5 because he's recessed. Because normally, if you talk to guys about running zone techniques or out or wide zone or things like that, a lot of times you'll get different techniques on how far to drop or bucket or recess, or what they're going to do with their splits at the line of scrimmage, how tight they hug the ball, if they need to work to try and cut somebody off. So by being off the line, he's naturally recessed to be a guy that can cut off a backside 5 technique. For us in our duo game, if we decide to continue to carry the duo play, it may make this block a little bit easier for this player in the duo scheme, because if he's recessed, as opposed to kicking him out from inside out off of the down block and having that guy spill, if he's recessed, he may be able to almost scoop that player, which in turn would be the equivalent of the kick out. It just wouldn't be as physical. But if that player loosens himself up, you may not need it to be as physical, because you may gain some space if he has to loosen because of his alignment here as a Y-off. So I wouldn't consider it a kick out, I'd consider it a cutoff, but we may have an easier time getting it cut off, because one of the problems we have with our duo play, when we try and keep it as more of an inside run, all right, and not a run that is going to get bounced, jump cut wide to a tight end wing, tight flank, push crack guys where you leave the corner unblocked in the duo play. If you watch a duo play with NFL clips, more often than not, the duo play gets jump cutted outside to an unblocked corner, and that guy's got to make a play because they've got tighter flanks, tight ends, bigger bodies. They condense everything, and that end ends up getting washed down inside. The Mike becomes an A-gap fitter because of the flow, based on the front, the defense. The Mike becomes an A-gap fitter, and he fits downhill, which forces the tailback who's reading the Mike in duo to then push outside. The issue we get into running the duo play, and I've always known it's an issue, I've never hid it from the fact or denied the fact that it's an issue, is if we don't get a good kick out on the 5 and the Mike plugs, the ball's got to go back behind the 3 technique, and the 5 making that an issue gives the ball nowhere to go. Now, we usually don't have an issue when we run duo as a read play, because the quarterback pulling essentially becomes the jump cut of the back outside. So when we run the duo scheme as a read play, we don't have that issue, because if the 5 squeezes and we pull, the quarterback becomes the jump cut of the tailback. When we run it as a true kick out play where we're trying to block 6 in the box and kick that 5 technique out, when we don't have a great sniffer or they have a great 5 technique that's a spill player, we have a hard time getting them spilled. So we have to carry other things in our package, read game, power read, buck sweep, or pin and pull type deals, because if that guy's going to be a hard squeeze spill player, we have to do some things where we let him squeeze spill, and now we make our job easy to pin, and now we can get the ball outside. The only problem I have with that is that becomes formationally dependent with some things. The way we play football as a 20 personnel or quasi 11 personnel team, it becomes a little bit more formational dependent. If I played true 11 personnel with him attached, now you get more pin and pull opportunities. So you got to understand what you're trying to do as an offense and what you're trying to get to within your personnel schemes, and what the slight nuance of him hipped or in the box, the tackle box inside the tackle, what that gives you. Now, what you gain from this is he now becomes an immediate vertical threat. Defense has to be able to handle that as a vertical threat. But you still got the ability for him to be an insert, zip backside player, so that the defense still has to defend, in my opinion, 2 back sets. If they make 1 back trips, checks, 3x1 checks, they're going to leave themselves a gap short sometimes. So with the studies that I've done the last 3 weeks since our season ended, and some of the guys that I have talked to, okay, one guy you need to check out, I'll give him a shout out right now, Coach Cadutti, all right, Codutti, he's in Houston, Texas. He's got a YouTube channel. Does some great stuff on NFL wide zone. He's got some stuff on the duo play. He's got some run and shoot stuff. I've had some conversations with him. Got hooked up with him from Coach McKee, who has his Air Raid YouTube channel. So social media and networking is how you grow. I got in touch with Coach Cadutti, and we've been talking about some things and how to not only analyze some things, but how to wrinkle them, because there's a difference between analyzing, consulting, and coaching. You can analyze things and watch how the 49ers do certain things, but that doesn't mean that we can do the things that we're watching the 49ers do. We don't have those body types. We don't have those athletes. We can't really play the game necessarily the same way. But we can analyze those schemes, the wide zones and the boots and the inside or tight zones and the duo play. We can analyze that and gain knowledge from it, but doesn't necessarily mean we can use it. So in the past 3 weeks, I've gotten in touch with some really good people. Tony Schiffman from the Hog Football Chat, another great guy, another smart guy. I've been able to talk to some people about how I want to play, but what we need to do to be different. We need to wrinkle and change our offense a little bit. We are going to wrinkle and change our offense a little bit. The conundrum I'm in right now that I talked about the other day on a previous video is, are we going to be gap scheme, or are we going to be inside zone, outside zone, or wide zone? And in my opinion, if you're inside zone, wide zone, you need to live in that world and probably get rid of some of your gap schemes, because you can't teach it all and you can't rep it all during the week. So the current dilemma I'm in is, do I want to get into more of a hip alignment, still staying what I would consider 20 personnel, but giving us more of an 11 personnel feel and look by alignment? And if I do I want to then become an inside zone, wide zone team because I may lose some of the gap schemes? Or do I want to stay with my gap schemes, use this alignment to give me some different things that I haven't had in the past, and maybe run less power, but now I get counter as a gap scheme going back the other way, which when you watch a lot of the good formationally teams in college that play this way, you see a lot of OF, a lot of guard pull, that extra hybrid body, whether it's a tight end or a fullback, call it what you want. He's the wrap guy on the counter play with some RPOs and some read game, and so a lot of cool things in there. So that's my current dilemma. But the reason for the video today was to talk about personnel, how personnel gets labeled, why teams use numbers to label personnel, and then to show you the slight nuances between what would be a true 20 personnel formation, in my opinion, regardless of the numbering you want to give the personnel on the field. That to me would be a true 2-back personnel set. But if I hip them either weak or I hip them strong, now we get in a set where he's an immediate vertical threat. We get in a set where he's created a quasi 3-man surface even though he's not attached. So that formation gives some people a few other things to think about, but at the same time, the way I want to play football, it allows me to still use this guy as a travel guy, as an insert guy, I can use him in my RPO game, especially when he's over here on the 3-man side. Two things we like to do. We like to throw read game off of our duo play. We like to throw read game RPO, where we block the 6 in the box, read him, block him, release him behind the scrimmage. The slice play, whatever you want to call it, we like to throw that. If we are playing teams that might gap exchange, for whatever reason, maybe they set the 3 away from the sniffer. So maybe you get this front here. And now off of for our duo scheme, it would become, we wouldn't have 2 double teams. We'd have 1 double team at the point of attack and a straight climb. But now maybe they're a team that likes to chase and replace. So what we also carry is what we call a sneak off the same action, what we call a sneak RPO, where we lock the tackle, we still slice or whatever route you want to call that, tailback, behind, the fullback, sniffer, tight end, behind the line of scrimmage to the flat, and he's behind the line of scrimmage because we're physically blocking and can't throw the ball downfield. And then we'll read the mic so that if they're a scrape exchange team, normally the mic's only going to scrape exchange if the tackle veer releases or blocks inside. This right here, okay, this right here will give you normally the stimulus of the end playing the edge and the mic being the B-gap fitter. Most of the time he won't scrape exchange because he doesn't get the stimulus to scrape exchange. But if they're a man-free team possibly, and the mic happens to be responsible maybe for the sniffer, and they're a man-free team, and we lock this and the mic goes out in coverage, now we might get ourselves an inside run to possibly an unfitted gap. We also like to run the same lock scheme, especially if we know we're going to see a split field team with a weak safety that likes to stay weak or rotate down weak. We also like to run the pop RPO, where we'll run smash out here, him vertical, and now we'll lock it just like this and read the mic. If the mic carries this vertical, we run the ball. If the mic fits an open gap, we try to throw the pop, because the free safety normally is going to have to take, in that coverage structure, he's going to have to take the corner route. So aligning the fullback there makes him more of a vertical threat. I still have my flat RPO. I still have my pop RPO. And I still have him as a guy that can travel to go backside and kick, to insert inside, maybe even to go backside and wham, a 3 technique. So I'm leaning heavily off of playing more hip alignment Y off, creating a quasi 3-man surface, but not attaching him so I don't lose him as a travel player and a guy that can do multiple things in my run game. Hopefully this video helps you. Hopefully it gives you a brief understanding of personnel, a brief understanding of the slight nuances in that 2-back set. Remember to check out the first Play Fast Football Clinic coming up January 24th, 25th, 26th, 2020, St. Augustine, Embassy Suites. Website is www.playfastfbclinic.com, www.playfastfbclinic.com for registration info, hotel info, vendor info. We have a great lineup of speakers. If you follow me on Twitter, check it out. Just got a graphic that we put out today. Our lineup of speakers, the 15 or 16, I believe it's 15 speakers that we have combined for over 1,600 wins and 11 state titles, with multiple other state title appearances. So our clinic lineup, you're getting over 1,600 wins as head coaches, more than 11 state titles as head coaches, multiple state title appearances, guys that are in the state title this year like Mike Coe at Madison County, good luck. Guys that are in the semifinals like Randy McPherson at Lowndes, good luck. Buddy Nobles at Irwin County, good luck. A lot of great things going on with our speakers. I think it's going to be a great clinic. As always, remember to click that subscribe button. Click the bell for notifications so you know when videos come out. Thumbs up to like, thumbs down to dislike. Interaction is always good. Commenting in the videos, anything about this video, other videos, any videos you'd like to see me do. I get back to 99% of the comments that I see, I will respond to. So please remember to comment. As always, I appreciate everything you guys have done for me, the Play Fast Football brand, following the channel, growing the network, building the brand. I appreciate it all. Remember, you won't play well until you play fast, and I will certainly catch you guys soon next time.